So if you own an 09 to 18 5.7 liter powered Ram 1500 and you are looking for one of the nicest looking, one of the most well built, and from my experience, one of the most performance enhancing intakes, you should be checking out the Series 77 from K&N. Now K&N's been around longer than I've been alive. They make some of the most well built intakes on the market, and that is certainly the case here. Now we all care about performance above all else, right? So first things first, we ran our truck on the Dyno bone stock, and our truck made 289 horsepower and 273 pound-feet of torque. We then installed the Series 77 with the appropriate tune, and our truck made 318 horsepower and 323 pound-feet of torque. That makes for peak gains of 29 horsepower and 50 pound-feet of torque. What's even more impressive though is the curve gains. The curve gains are what you're gonna feel when you're driving around on the city streets, so it's safe to say that the Series 77 will make a big improvement from idle to redline. A couple other reasons why I really like the Series 77, going back to the aesthetics or the looks, if you will. I think that this really cleans up the engine bay. It gets rid of all that ugly black plastic. I'm a huge fan of polished intake tubes, and I'm also a big fan of the open element design. I think it gives it a really classic street rod kind of look. Other reason why I really like the Series 77, it installs very easily. You can get this done in the driveway in about 30 minutes to an hour with basic hand tools. So if you like the way this looks, go ahead and stick around. I'm actually going to show you the install step by step. To install your new intake, you will need the following tools: a 3mm Allen key, a 4mm Allen key, a 1/4" drive ratchet, a 3/8 drive ratchet, an 8mm socket, a 10mm socket, a 13mm socket, a 10mm wrench, and a pair of snips. Optional but helpful tools include a small extension, a swivel joint, a 3/8 to 1/4" adapter, and a cordless impact. So before we install our new intake, we have to remove our factory intake. Dodge made it really easy, thankfully. So all you gotta do is loosen the clamp holding the tube to the throttle body using an 8mm socket. Then we're gonna disconnect our mass airflow sensor, pull one breather hose off the factory air box, and then we can actually lift the entire assembly out of the truck. It shouldn't take us more than a few minutes. All right, now that we have our factory intake removed, we're gonna take our factory crankcase ventilation hose with us. To get to that hose fitting, we have to pop the engine cover off. You don't need any tools, just use a little bit of hand pressure to remove it. So as you can see, the new K&N system is a pretty obvious upgrade in the looks department compared to the factory airbox. I'm a fan of these open element designs because you can see the filter and you can see all this nice shiny chrome here. We're ditching the closed airbox and we're ditching this frankly kind of ugly black plastic. Now we have to do a little bit of setup here on the table before we install our new intake. We have to set up our airbox here, or our heat shield I should say. Then we also have to set up our intake tube with our original temperature sensor right here. To remove the sensor from the factory tube is pretty simple. You just pull up on it, twist it very gently, pop it out, and place it aside. Let's go ahead and get this ugly air box out of here. And we'll start with setting up our new heat shield. Now, whether your truck has AC lines running near the intake area or not will dictate whether you use the plate with the cutout here or the plate that does not have this little cutout. Our truck does have those AC lines as you saw earlier, so we're gonna go ahead and stick with this one. Now to set up the heat shield, it's really straightforward. Just gonna set this plate on the outside like so, and you're gonna line it up with all the threaded holes inside here. Once you do that, you're gonna secure it with the button head bolts provided in the kit, and to tighten those down, you are gonna need a 3mm Allen key. All right, so once you have your heat shield assembled, you're going to install the weather stripping on it. That'll have your heat shield ready to go for install. All right, so our heat shield's ready to go. We can begin installing some stuff on it for the filter and the intake tube. First things first, you're going to install the filter adapter. Now to install this, you're going to line it up with the two holes right here on the heat shield itself. You're going to tighten it down using the provided larger button head bolts with a 4mm Allen key. Once you've done that, you're going to install this silicone hose on the other end with two clamps. You're going to tighten the clamps down using an 8mm socket. All right, with our filter adapter and rubber coupler in place, we're going to install the brackets that actually secure the heat shield to the vehicle inside the engine bay. You're going to take this smaller bracket here that's all kind of twisted around. You're going to secure it to these two holes right here using the 10mm hex bolts and these nylon locking nuts. Once you've got this one tightened down, you're going to take the longer of the two brackets secured on the outside on this end of the heat shield. And in the case of ours, since we're using the cutout heat shield, we're going to be using one of the longer hex bolts as well as one of these spacers. That's going to help line the bracket up so that we don't have to bend it in place when we go to install it. All right, our heat shield is now all together and it's ready to be installed in our truck. We have to do a couple things to the intake tube before we install this as well. First things first, you're going to grab this little plastic barb fitting. You're going to thread it into the pre-threaded hole on the intake tube. These are plastic threads, so take care, hand tighten these. Don't use any power tools of any sort. All right, now that we have that barb fitting in place, we're going to install our temperature sensor, the one that we pulled out of our factory air box. To install this into the new intake tube, you're going to need this little rubber grommet. This might fight you a little bit, so if it does give you trouble, you can throw a little bit of PB Blaster or WD-40 on it to lube it up. That'll help it get in place easier. All right, now that our intake tube is set up, we can begin installing our new K&N system, starting with the heat shield. All right, so we have our heat shield resting down here. To secure it to your truck, we need a 13mm socket. You're pulling out two bolts, basically, to secure those brackets. One right here from the factory airbox mounting plate, and one up here inside the fender well. All right, with our heat shield in place, we're going to install this elbow on the throttle body. That's going to secure our intake tube between the throttle body and the heat shield. To do that, you're going to grab the smaller of the clamps provided in the kit and fit it on the smaller end of the elbow. Once you've done that, throw it on the throttle body and tighten the clamp down using an 8mm socket. So with that rubber elbow fitted to the throttle body, we can now install our new tube. You're going to grab 2 more of the provided clamps in the kit and you're going to secure the tube to both fittings on either end. Again, you're going to need an 8mm socket to tighten these down. All right, now our intake is technically one piece. We can install our filter. To do that, you're going to grab the largest clamp in the kit, throw it on the rubber end like so, and then you're going to fit it onto the filter adapter inside. Again, you're going to need an 8mm socket to tighten this clamp down like all the others. There are 2 of these in the kit, but depending on which kind of truck you have, will dictate which of the 2 you'll be using. It's real simple, just take a look at the connections and double check that they fit both ends. That'll let you know which one you're supposed to be using. Now, a couple things before we wrap up the install here of this intake. Number 1, we did leave our engine cover off if you haven't noticed so far. Number 2, the instructions say that you have to cut the factory breather hose. We actually found through some test fitting and a little bit of ingenuity with the included hardware, you don't have to do that actually. We're not a fan of permanently modifying factory hardware, so we wanted to see if there was a way for us to not do that. Now, the way that you can go about avoiding all that is really easy. Grab the new breather hose that K&N provides in the kit and cut one section to 3 inches. Then use the L-shaped barb fitting and secure it to another section of the provided hosing. That's going to be 10 inches in length. This is going to allow you to retain the factory breather hose without cutting it whatsoever. It's not going to kink and it'll line up perfectly with the barb fitting on the new intake tube. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get this reinstalled. We're going to use one of the provided small band clamps to keep the factory side of this secure. So once you got that breather hose installed, if you want to, you can throw the engine cover back on with the intake installed. All you got to do is disconnect the rubber coupler to the throttle body and slide the engine cover underneath, but it's entirely optional. Other than that, that actually wraps up my review of the Series 77 cold air intake from K&N, fitting your 09 to 18 5.7 liter powered Ram 1500. I'm Travis, thanks for watching, and for all things Ram, keep it right here at AmericanTrucks.com.